we know this is a kept nation. We know all the rules are broken. We know wars are planned and politics is rigged. But is now the time for the Iran war? There are a number of troubling indicators, and Kurt Nemo has issued an alert to look out for World War III. And of course, there's a lot of reason to believe that. Here in this busy graphic, you can see some of the indicators. War in the Middle East now appears imminent as the U.S., Britain, the European Union, and Israel put the finishing touches on an embargo against Iran, a de facto declaration of war with warships steaming toward the Persian Gulf. But that's not all. Of course, we have the recent U.S.-Israeli war games in the Persian Gulf. We have Iran with its war games, an announcement of more war games, including to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. We have Britain sending in warships. We already have Russian warships in the area, French and Russian warships off the coast of Syria, according to Depp file. And we have the statements from Ron Paul that sanctions are the first step towards war. Now, is he right? Let's listen to the quote. Sanctions were the first step in our wars against Iraq and Libya, and now more sanctions planned against Syria and Iran are leading down the same destructive path Ron Paul warned. But of course, no one wants to listen to Ron Paul when there's a war they could have, so they'll probably be leaning towards a kept political puppet. Oil prices are also rising along with tensions, now headed towards 113 a barrel, and many experts predict the prices could be well over 200, 250, 300, even 500 if the Strait of Hormuz was blocked or if a war went hot. Of course, there's a whole covert war against Iran going on in the background. Why? Because there's a hit list against Iran. It's on the globalist hit list. The question was how and when, not why or if there would be a war with Iran. So that's why I stress, is this the time? Now, you also have the Iranian missile-based propaganda. You see that today in the Associated Press. Iran nuke work at bunker is, quote, confirmed. Diplomats on Monday confirmed a report that Iran has begun uranium enrichment at an underground bunker. And the news is particularly worrying because the site is being used to make material that could be upgraded more quickly for use in nuclear weapon than the nation's main enriched stockpile. Is this true? I don't know, but you certainly have to question the timing, along with other reports that Ahmadinejad's visit to South America could be tied to long-range missiles and more. You could smell it in the air. War is brewing somewhere. Will they actually kick it off? You saw a lot of propaganda several years ago in 2006 for the Iranian war. It didn't happen then because so many people were warning against it happening. So I hope our warning here again can make them back off another time because, again, we know they're in the crosshairs. Nobody wants a World War III. That won't be good for anyone except the bankers. Of course, you also have the Russian naval flotilla docked in Syria with an undermining effort, of course, going on in Syria as well. Al-Qaeda operatives and others staging the coup in that country on top of everything else. The port call is aimed at bringing the two countries closer together and strengthening ties of friendship. The official SANA news agency quoted a Russian naval officer concerning their ships outside of Syria. Meanwhile, you have the rigged political game as the Republican primaries are underway. The first official primary vote tomorrow in New Hampshire on the heels of the Iowa caucus, where Ron Paul finished third but had an essentially statistical tie for first in terms of the delegates that were won at that event. Now, the whole deal leading into New Hampshire is we see a brand new wave of prostitute interruptions and circus and media claims of putting Ron Paul in a bad light just the day before the vote, with him in second place. First of all, you have this incident earlier that you're seeing video of where the cameras surrounded Ron Paul when he was at a meet and greet. He was supposed to meet New Hampshire primary voters. Instead, they packed the house with a bunch of high school students from Massachusetts, and the press gang wouldn't allow him to reach the voters. Then when he left, the media spun it and tried to act as if it was Ron Paul refusing to reach out to voters. One woman in particular became irate, started screaming at Ron Paul and claiming he had promised to meet with their mother. Apparently, some reports indicate a staffer or something had given the woman reassurances. Ron Paul himself wasn't in position to talk to these people and pretty much had to leave the event. But that didn't stop The Hill from saying media mob chases Ron Paul from campaign stop in New Hampshire. And quoting heavily from a fringe candidate who shouted at Ron Paul, called him a demon, said, "We have you surrounded. We are the media." A man wearing a boot on his head and dressed as a wizard, according to some reports. Meanwhile, the New York Times reports in the caucus that Ron Paul cut off CNN again. About a week and a half ago or so, you saw a contrived report where Ron Paul supposedly stormed out of a CNN interview where they asked about the newsletters. They edited the tape to their own liking to put him in a bad light. Now, again, from this event this morning where he was surrounded by the press, Dana Bash from CNN was supposedly a few feet away, and Ron Paul essentially became angry and refused to give an interview, though he did apparently give an interview to Fox News. Then you have CBS today, another of the branch of prostitutes who blatantly excluded Ron Paul from their coverage, showing a new poll from Suffolk University where they accidentally, for the 50th time, omitted Ron Paul from poll results in these prostitute media channels, the so-called mainstream media. They show Ron Paul with a hefty 43% lead, and then Gingrich, Huntsman, and Santorum all in single digits. Now, they are trying to anoint Mitt Romney, as many have pointed out, but they also presumably want to keep Ron Paul's name out of the headlines so he's not able to gain momentum because he's the only anti-war candidate. And as we've just shown you, they're gearing up for a war big time, and Obama, Romney, or any other creature is only going to back up that war, whatever they may say publicly. Now we have a clip from CBS regarding how he was left out of the poll.
I am really here for one reason and one reason only. And that is to make sure that we make Mitt Romney the next president of the United States of America.
Expectations are high in what has become Romney's adopted home state. A new Suffolk University poll shows him with a commanding lead in New Hampshire at almost 30 points above his rivals. At the same time, Newt Gingrich and Jon Huntsman have faltered. Rick Santorum, who polls in single digits here, is looking to give Romney a run in the Granite State after his near victory in Iowa.
And of course, it's no surprise not only to see them leaving Ron Paul out of it, but to seeing aging flip-floppers who support war, like John McCain supporting people like Romney. Now, we're all going to be watching on this Diebold thing because in 2008, there were a lot of really unaccounted for swings. For instance, Hillary Clinton ended up winning in 2008 by 3%, even though she was down 13% in the polls, an unexplained 16-point swing. Rudy Giuliani got more votes than he probably should have, and Romney really got a boost in 2008 in New Hampshire from the Diebold voting machines. Of course, Ron Paul himself got 0 votes in Sutton County, which they recorded until people came forward and said they voted for him. They later had to admit that they omitted 31 votes from that little area and said, oh, it was human error, one of those things that just happens. So we're all going to keep an eye on it tomorrow and see what happens, because I don't think they want the snowball effect for the Ron Paul campaign. For some reason, he's just not allowed to win in 2012. Meanwhile, in true occultic fashion, there was a secret White House party in 2009, a secret Alice in Wonderland bash for Halloween during the recession. Now, they had a much more humble Halloween festivity that was covered by the media with school children that day from the Washington area. But then after that, they had a secret party hosted by Tim Burton and Johnny Depp, where they dressed up like the characters from the Alice in Wonderland film, and they drank blood vials filled with fruit punch at the bar, and the whole thing was very macabre, and the children of Obama were there and everything. It was a very plush party, all while the White House were nervous that the party might be covered in the press because a splashy Hollywood party would look strange to jobless Americans, while Well, you know, while the whole recession was going on and the economy was tanking and people were worried just about making ends meet, all while people were having fun in the White House. But I'm sure that's the least of it. But nonetheless, an interesting story there with the Mad Hatter and all. Scientists create silkworm spider hybrid that spins super strong silk. Of course, we've already reported on spider goats, genetically modified goats with spider silk put in them. Now they have genetically modified silkworms spliced in with the stronger spider silk. Scientists have used genes from spiders to create a new type of silkworm that could spin extra tough silk. Spider genes were injected into silkworms, making them spin silk stronger than steel. A group of biologists have created a new type of genetically modified silkworm capable of spinning extra strong silk, Spider-Man style. Now, the problem here is things are going to get carried away really quickly. We also had this report this week of the monkeys created from 6 different parents, spliced together chimeras. You also had the army ants where they re-engineered the already existing DNA to create new super ants with giant heads. And that's just the stuff they talk about publicly as they talk about creating human-animal hybrids to harvest clones from, and a whole lot more. Who's watching this? Is anyone regulating this for potential dangers, or is it just all to make body armor silk for the military-industrial complex because spiders can't be handily bred because they are too aggressive to each other in captivity? Well, something to think about, and we'll continue to watch that in the future. Meanwhile, a story on the New Jersey mayor who wants to pay you $1,000 to report illegal guns and destroy the Second Amendment. Brandon Smith of Alt Market reports there's nothing more disgusting or detestable than a citizen informant. Without citizen informants, tyrants could never retain the kind of power they wield. In fact, without citizen informants, totalitarian movements would never gain traction. But of course, this is why every functional oligarchy throughout history has implemented programs designed to encourage the development of common spies using the promise of monetary reward or collective recognition. An innocent man who's disarmed by law will always be victimized by an outlaw who is armed through criminality. Now, the concept of reduced crime through gun confiscation is so naive it warrants considerable analysis. Through such efforts, good men are left defenseless while evil men are free to wreak havoc. Those are the words of Brandon Smith at Alt Market, good writer. He also adds, the Second Amendment is not a negotiable or debatable pillar of the Constitution. It is absolute in its protection, and yet all these city mayors try to break down the Second Amendment and use excuses like violence created through other economic means to disarm the public and encourage this turning in of people who might have illegal guns, of turning in these guns for gift certificates, and a whole lot more. Of course, this particular mayor, Corey, I think his name was, this video is from a couple years ago, but it certainly illustrates a larger trend because they have hundreds of these mayors recruited in these programs to combat urban violence and call for a reining in of guns and promote the atmosphere as though guns were already illegal when, of course, they're not.